Welcome. Let's talk a little bit about coordinates. Now, most of this stuff is going to seem intuitive, like you already know it, but it's important that you become familiar with some specific terms that will be used throughout this course and that you'll see throughout your career as a game developer. Now, first, I'd like you to imagine a red arrow pointing from left to right. Now, this arrow points back and forth in this direction and goes on forever, but we'll just visualize it with this little arrow here for now. Now, this arrow has little tick marks indicating distance, like a ruler. Now, imagine that you are a little red dot sitting on this arrow. You are at position 0, and the arrow has a direction. If you move to the right, you're moving in the arrow's positive direction. If you move to the left, you're moving in the arrow's negative direction. And wherever you are, you can always look at the tick marks to estimate how much distance you've traveled from 0. But you can only travel along the red line. Your movement is restricted to one dimension. This direction, represented by the red arrow, will be called x. We say that your movement is restricted to the x-axis. And the distance you've traveled from 0 is your x-coordinate. This is a numerical value that represents your distance from 0. We only need a single number to represent your x-coordinate. A single value like this is called a scalar. The word scalar literally means a numerical quantity. So you can move back and forth on the x-axis. You can identify your distance traveled by your x-coordinate. But now imagine that a new arrow appears perpendicular to the x-axis, crossing it at a 90-degree angle at the 0 point. Now, this axis has tick marks indicating distance as well, and we can call this arrow the y-axis. Now, you can still move backward and forward in the x direction, and the distance you've traveled in this direction is still represented by your x-coordinate. However, now that this new dimension exists, the y dimension, you can also have a y-coordinate as well, and this new coordinate represents the distance you've traveled from 0 on the y-axis. So now that you can move forward and backward in two directions, your movement is now two-dimensional, and your coordinates are now represented by two values, your x and y coordinates. We call these values your xy coordinates, and we often refer to these as an ordered pair. Pair as in there's two values, and ordered as in the order matters. First the x, then the y. Wherever you move in this 2D space, your xy coordinates represent your position, x being your distance in the x direction from the 0 point, and y being your distance in the y direction from the 0 point. We see that moving around by changing your xy coordinates, your movement is restricted to the xy plane. The xy plane is the set of all xy coordinates that you could possibly move to in the x and y dimensions. Now imagine a third arrow, perpendicular to both the x and y axes, crossing them at their 0 points. We'll call this third arrow the z-axis, and its positive direction is upward, and its negative direction is downward. Now your location is represented by three coordinates, an x, a y, and a z coordinate. We call these your xyz coordinates, and they're represented by an ordered triple, with x first, then y, then z last. In any coordinate system, the point where all coordinates are equal to 0 is called the origin. This is where the axes intersect. In 3D, it's the point 0, 0, 0. In 2D, it's the point 0, 0. And in one-dimensional space, it's just the coordinate 0. So in summary, we've learned about coordinates, and that a scalar is a single numerical value. In one-dimensional space, we can represent our distance from 0 on the x-axis by a scalar value. We call this our x-coordinate. And that our xy coordinates represent our position in two-dimensional space on the xy plane, and that these are represented by an ordered pair. We learned that xyz coordinates represent our position in a three-dimensional space, and these are represented by an ordered triple, with x first, then the y, then z last. And we learned that in any coordinate system, the point in space where all coordinates are 0 is called the origin. So in three-dimensional space, that would be 0, 0, 0. And in two-dimensional space, that would be 0, 0. So now we understand coordinates, and these are crucial to understanding vectors, which we'll talk about very soon.